Well, I certainly wasn't expecting this. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So I'm finally getting into the Tik Tok estate auction win guitar reviews. We're gonna kick things off with this beautiful Lavender Sparkle Gibson Les Paul. So all the way back from the first episode when we looked into this thing, I just fell in love with it because it's got this beautifully sparkle lavender finish. Purple Gibsons are kind of far and few between, till the mod collection came along and started to pump them out a lot more frequently. Check out the purple sugar plum fairy, as I had called it. Prior to that, your options were very limited. The Les Paul Goddess is one that's always stuck in my head, but there have been a few Guitar Center custom shop Les Paul standards, and you have like the Rose Gold series, which is more pink than purple. But what's really awesome about this one is it's a metallic sparkly purple, not only on the front, but also our back and the neck. It's just everywhere. And the whole mid-2000s custom shop era is such a great experimental time. Our serial number dates this one to 2008, so it's right in the midst of the custom shop getting crazy. I mean, we're talking things like the Les Paul 25 model that we documented in this episode, or you might check out one of the limited edition super customs. They were trying to bring heritage back to the brand, and it helped them start to branch out. Sure, are the reissues of this era the most exact copies? No, they're not. In fact, they usually sell for a discount as compared to the newer day ones that have the correct hot hide glue construction. But when bidding on this guitar, I honestly didn't know what it was. Is it a custom shop Les Paul standard, or is it some sort of a reissue? If you're not familiar with the difference between those, custom shop Les Paul standards usually have a Nashville bridge, but not always. Same thing with the neck tenon, sometimes short neck, sometimes long neck, again, depending on the era that they were born. But it's a Les Paul standard built at the custom shop, but not necessarily to historic specs. So far, we've got an ABR1 bridge on this one, but a very unique out there finish, and we don't have our typical serialization. But I guess the only way to really find out is to throw this thing on the workbench, get it cleaned up because it is just disgusting, and then we'll get to that playing demo. So after using my swirl remover, this thing just came to life. Like if we thought it was beautiful before, now it's almost looking at a staticky TV, but this time it's a lavender purple sparkle. The effect really does not get captured too well on camera, but this thing is gorgeous. We've got cream plastics matching our binding on the body and the neck. We've got a 57 Classic in our neck. It's also dated to very early 2008, so that helps verify that what I thought the serial number was is correct. But now let's check the bridge. The lead's a little bit short, but we can also see it's a regular 57 Classic. And everything's looking good in that route. But how about the neck? There we go, a long neck tenon. That is a very good spec to have in 08. And looking in this cavity, you can see the maple top, so it has traditional construction here. And this block is the maple that caps off our truss rod route. Now our bridge is a traditional historic style ABR1, branded as such on the back, and it's the version with the retaining wire. Then our tailpiece is lightweight aluminum. Now unfortunately, being in that storage locker, it was subjected to some high humidity or definitely salt in the air, so you can see some oxidization and pitting on a lot of the hardware, but I cleaned it off the best I could. So far this has all the historic style specs to it, even though the finish isn't necessarily that. Got a regular 3-way toggle switch here with switch tip and poker chip. Single ply binding along the front, so regular Les Paul standard stylings here. However, we do not have any thumb bleeders around our reflector knobs. So that makes me think, okay, maybe not historic spec. But continuing on here, we can tell that this never had a pick guard from the factory. Now it's kind of hard to see in this lighting, but there is some finish checking in this metallic finish. I noticed it while cleaning it, but I'm not seeing it now, so it kind of plays peekaboo on you. But as far as the top goes, I really only noticed it right there in the cutaway. I didn't see any plaguing the top, which is very common on these. So moving on from our maple top and mahogany body, we've got a mahogany neck and an awesome rosewood fretboard. This was another reason that I fell in love with this example. It's got so much character to it. You don't typically find rosewood boards looking like this on Gibsons. It really reminds me of my old Brazilian rosewood Les Paul custom. Now just to be clear, I'm not calling this a Brazilian rosewood fretboard, but the unique board deserved documentation as well as our unique finish here. But these frets were in poor shape. They needed a heavy duty polishing, and that's what I gave it, because that's what this thing deserves, and that board probably had never been conditioned in its life. It's a standard 24 3/4 inch scale length, paired with a 12-inch fretboard radius, and then has measurements of 1.68 inches for the nut. That increases to 2.05 by the 12. As far as thickness, our first fret neck depth is 0.96, and a chunky 1.02 by the 12. That is a surprisingly big neck. Here it is on the contour gauge. 1st fret and 12th fret. Definitely is that chunky C shape. Now, unfortunately, with his whole collection not being stored properly, you see these lines right here by the edges of the frets? That's when the wood shrinks. Maybe it didn't have enough humidity. It was too hot in his storage locker where these all were. So having a small line by your Gibsons in the binding, that is very common. However, this one's a little bit more extreme. On some of them in the higher fret registers, you can actually see the whole fret nib protruded there. Usually you don't see those V-shaped lines. So full disclosure, do you feel it? Yes, very slightly. However, it's not like still protruding. This is stabilized in my environment for a little bit now. But we do have some finish checking along the neck right here with that whole process. And a little bit of bubbled lacquer on this one. It's almost like the inlay was kind of falling out. Now it's back in, and it's important to note that this is a tortoiseshell material. Looking at our headstock here, don't mind that I have half the tuners off, we have a regular truss rod cover style, so it's not the historic one. But thankfully, our truss rod is in perfect shape. That was a big risk buying from this auction. You didn't know if these things were in working condition or not because they said they're as is. But we do have historic style Kluson tuners on here, a nice Les Paul model silkscreen, and our Gibson logo. This is part of the slightly shrinking neck where the nut stayed the same size and kind of protruded out on the finish. So that does stick up a bit proud. That's why I've got a line forming right there and a small finish check off the side. So we've got black backplates. Typically the historics will have brown, but I was quite shocked when I removed this and saw this marking. So true year historic reissues get some sort of a marking in here that calls it what year reissued is. So this is technically a 1957 reissue done up in a Lavender Lilac Sparkle finish, which is truly bizarre, especially because up here we have a regular custom shop style serial number rather than what you normally see. So since we have this and predominantly historic specs, this is technically an R7 in my opinion. It's either that or they got a custom order for this guitar and they're like, yeah, okay, just slap it all with an R7. Here's our toggle switch cavity route, nothing too special there. But this was definitely collector owned. I really don't see any buckle marks or scratches. All it needed was a little bit of TLC and love to make it as beautiful as it is now. Here you can see some finish checking by the neck. Nothing to worry about in this situation, but that varies example to example. I didn't see any dings over here. And our other side is looking pretty good too. Knowing that it's marked in R7 and the fact that it's got this big giant baseball bat neck, it makes complete sense. And I'm not seeing any major marks on the back of this neck, but as you go up the headstock, it starts to turn slightly yellow. I'm a little bit scared there might have been a touch-up on this. We are going to have to blacklight it because you see how it's nice and lavendery purple here? Now, the camera does accentuate it. It's not really that noticeable in person, but you will notice these tuners. What on earth has gone on there? They've discolored the finish. Now, the thing to know about these Klusons is you're supposed to lubricate them. Sometimes it will seep through and go into the finish. That's why I had taken these tuners off because I wanted to see, is that actually in the finish or is it just a surface level stain that needs cleared off? But unfortunately, I was unsuccessful in cleaning that off. So it's possible that that then further leached into the rest of the finish and that's why there's a bit of a fade here. However, it could also just be a touch-up and it wasn't the exact same lacquer, slightly yellowed. And drum roll please, what is the verdict? Did I get scammed? Nah. This black light's the way I would expect to see, so it's definitely just some sort of a leaching from whatever somebody used to lubricate that at one point in time, because that is a perfectly even glow. So yeah, if you're ever doing that, be careful what you use. But looking at the rest of the guitar here, it's looking nice and even. I don't even see any stand marks or anything on this. It is just a collector kept guitar that did not get used too much. But I really like these tuners. They have a really cool semi-glow to them. As part of the oxidization process of all the salt in the air, because you remember this was somewhere in California, the tuners were pretty corroded. I left the tips alone because I thought it kind of had a cool vibe, but you can definitely see the difference between exposed versus non-exposed. Well, there's our tuners back installed. We can see our serial number. So the way you read this is CS for custom shop 83872. So this 8 tells you what year it is. And then you have to look at how many digits you have. If you have 5, you're within the 2000s. Now, if you have a 6th one, you're in the 2010s or the 2020s. So then you have to look at your case, COA, see what else you've got, because for whatever reason, they didn't just continue to add digits as the years went on. So it gets confusing. And if you only have 4, that's how you know you're within the 90s. So 2008. 3,872nd guitar that year. All strung back up, this one weighs 9 pounds, 7.4 ounces on my scale. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this Lavender Beauty sounds. So 57 Classics, they can rock or they can do mellow stuff. Now that we know all about the Lavender Sparkle Les Paul, what are my final thoughts on this thing? It rocks way harder than I was expecting. Like, these 57 Classics just want to bite your head off. But that is because they're like really close to the strings, so you could modify that if you need it to be a bit more mellow. But this finish is just awesome. I have no regrets buying this. I mean, sure, we've got the slight binding issues, but while playing it, I did not notice that affecting it at all. So you just have this beautiful, essentially 1957 reissue. I mean, now that I've had this thing in my hands and I've played it, yeah, that is a big, chunky baseball bat neck. So make sure you like that spec if you're interested in being the next owner of this one. So I just love it. It's got the unique, crazy, sparkly, out there finish, top, back, and sides, all that, but yet we still have a win in the wood grain department. So it's just like the best of both worlds for somebody who happens to like the lavender color. All right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can check this one out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com, if you want to be the next one to give it a whirl. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.